Good evening, everyone. Am I audible? Yes? Okay. Love, Jihad and Other Fictions. I was telling Supriya, I have only one complaint about the book. So I was carrying this in the airport. And then I realized people were staring at me because they can only read the Love, Jihad part. They must have thought I'm some sort of a believer and I'm reading a book on Love, Jihad. But this is a book you all should buy as you go out of here, because when we have these conversations with our friends and family who insist on love jihad, population jihad, land jihad, narcotics jihad, and all kinds of jihad, this is a book which will empower you with information, easy to read, good conclusions, so you can give it back during that conversation, empowered with facts. So I do recommend that all of you buy the book as you go out. Now we'll step into the discussion. There are 4 major themes in the book. You look at love jihad, you look at population jihad, you look at Muslim appeasement and forced conversions. Why did you zoom in on these 4 topics? Especially the Muslim appeasement one, because I thought that would be a little bit more difficult topic to do, right? It's so vast also. There are so many governments and state governments. Both of you, one by one.
Sure. So thanks, Dhanya, firstly for that really generous introduction, and also thank you, BIC, for hosting us. Both Supriya and I actually have a connection to Bangalore, so we have an audience made up of friends and family who we request not to make faces at us while we pontificate about matters of national importance. So it's great to be here. Essentially, when we talk about elections and we talk about this idea of disinformation or falsehoods or whatever one wants to call it, there has always been a certain assumption that when it comes to politicians, when it comes to elections, when it comes to government, that those in power will always be creative with the facts. And there's a certain kind of cynical but good-natured way we always approach it, which is best summed up in that phrase by Mario Cuomo, the late New York governor, about you govern in prose, but you campaign in poetry. The assumption there, the kind of unwritten Lakshman Rekha, is that these falsehoods or these distortions or these propaganda are limited in number. They also follow some broad guardrails of what you can actually cook up and lie about. And that once you are in power, you will sort of dilute or moderate some of the inflammatory or sensationalist things you'll say from the campaign stage. And finally, that the other stakeholders of democracy, like the media and so on, will act as a check and balance and try to kind of filter and push back against some of these things you've been saying. What has happened, Dhanya, in the past decade is that all those assumptions have collapsed. Under the regime, under this present regime, the Modi regime, at least in my 30 years of journalism, I've never seen such a volcano of falsehoods, from half-truths to propaganda to outright lies, cutting across all different forms, whether it's economic, whether it's to do with their own track record. What we focused on was the most divisive and dangerous aspect of it, where, again, talking about the earlier assumption that you will have certain guardrails about what you will actually invent. This idea that high-ranking political leaders, ministers, governors, MPs, chief ministers, have platformed the most extreme fringe theories of the Hindu right, essentially to construct this very divisive and harmful narrative that the majority is in danger from the minority, that nearly 1 billion Hindus are in danger from 200 million odd Muslims and 20 million Christians. The third is that having now come to power, there has been no moderation. This is not an election time phenomenon. This is 24/7. Many of these theories have been passed into law. So because we're in Karnataka, as we know, we had a BJP MLA, Gulihatti Shekhar, who claimed falsely that his mother had been converted to Christianity by a conversion mafia. The Karnataka government goes ahead and passes, largely on the basis of that, one of the most draconian anti-conversion laws in the country. And then, of course, there are a string of attacks on Christians and so on and so forth. And lastly, the media, and we'll come to the other institutions of democracy later, far from acting as a brake to this tsunami of divisive falsehoods in the past decade, has actually actively amplified them. night after night, night after night. I mean, again, in the Karnataka context, Suvarna TV, which is this Kannada channel, was one of the main amplifiers of the Gulihatti Shekhar claim. So I think this book was a reaction to this phenomena where we are essentially political journalists. We are not doing the excellent work that fact checkers like Alt News and others are doing, examining WhatsApp forwards and so on. So our response was to the fact that we are now in an India where these sorts of theories and assumptions are being platformed at the highest level and are poisoning the communal well, are dividing, families and social groups apart from society. And so we thought we would pick, to us what were the most virulent examples of it and put it in something a little more sort of enduring as a book, as opposed to I do it on TV, Supriya, reports for digital. And so that was really, in short, the idea behind it.
Supriya, the first section deals with love jihad. This is something that we report on almost every day. And I sometimes wonder, how do we even put that phrase in a news copy, right? Because when someone's saying love jihad. So, for example, at the News Minute, we have a rule that whenever we write love jihad, it has to be love jihad and then say bogi. And then we have a definition that we have given for love jihad that has to be in every copy. But the point is, it's been repeated so many times that it has become part of vocabulary for most people. What was the most startling discovery for you? Because most of these cases you have reported, or Scroll has written about. But even when you have gone back to a lot of cases, if you read the book, they've gone back to a lot of cases which were reported as love jihad to the couples who had become a matter of coverage, and to actually see what is happening with them now, and discovered in almost all cases that the entire reporting was false, reporting or the news which was spread about them. What was perhaps the most startling thing that you found as you went on this journey?
Thanks, Dhanya. Is this mic working? Well, I'll just like to start by saying that I wasn't part of this book project initially. It really was Vasu and Mariam's idea, Sreenivasan and Mariam's idea. And I first heard about it, I was very excited. My response was, please do this book quickly because, I know lots of people I'd like to gift it to. And then in the course of their work on the book, I checked in with them, and at some point they wrote me in. So by the time I got into the project, they'd already laid out the outline, and they had done some work on each of the chapters. We were looking at the love jihad cases, and it struck me that we really need to go and probe patient zero case of love jihad, which is the first case of love jihad that surfaced, so-called love jihad or love jihad bogi, as you say. I know we just kind of tend to use this term now in this kind of indiscriminate way. This was in Kerala in 2009, where a case surfaced in the Kerala High Court, where two young women, 23-year-old MBA students, ran away from home. Their fathers went to the court, filed a habeas corpus petition, and the women then were forced to appear in court, and they appeared with their husbands. And they said that they were in love with their husbands, two Muslim men, and they had married voluntarily, willingly, of choice, and yet the court sent them to their parents' house. It noted, and it's there, and we sort of dug out all the case records, and it was very clear that the judges recorded that the women have said they don't want to even speak to their parents. But, and the term that the judges use is, in the interest of harmony, they have persuaded the women to go back to their parents' house, giving them a week's time. And when they do return a week later, they have completely done a U-turn, and they say they don't want to go back with their husbands. So it's pretty evident what may have happened in that week. And the judges actually, again in their order, record that, and they say, this is very surprising, but we need to respect the wishes of adult women. So what happened a week before? I mean, why is it that they didn't think that they needed to respect the wishes of those two women? So this case is what we probed in considerable detail. This was the first case that came on the official record where an allegation was made which was splashed across papers in Kerala. That's where the term Romeo Jihad or Love Jihad actually first found mention in mainstream media reporting. And what we found in this case is very revelatory. I don't want to reveal too much. I hope you'll pick up the book and read about it. But just to say that case continues to be cited till date, also because it led to a pretty extraordinary Kerala High Court judgment where Justice Sankaran asked the DGP to probe whether there's a love jihad conspiracy afoot in Kerala. So that kind of opened the floodgates. And even after we've written this book, when we post about the book on social media, it's kind of, 5 times out of 10, the response that I get to my tweets is, but what about the Kerala High Court judgment of 2009? So to say that a lot of, a lot of this is flowing from very, very strange judicial orders, which, as we show in this case, eventually collapse, but they still circulate in the public arena and they continue to do damage. So we really went back to that first original case, and that's where we began, and then we try to think through, because this is like a data set of infinite cases. Like every day, the right wing is posting about some case or the other. So how do we then sort of, in this infinite data set, pick a few cases is something that we agonized over, and we found a methodology, and we can talk about it later.
So in the Kerala case, actually, there were two things which I noticed. One, Dr. Vasu, they're actually saying that Kerala takes the credit for love jihad. I think you have to oppose here and come in and say Karnataka did first. But the whole point is, there was this one line in your book where that man who had married the Hindu woman says that when she was the Muslim man, he says when she was brought to the court, it looked like she was drugged. So there was this whole controversy in Kerala where they had these reconversion centers where the women used to be taken, drugged and beaten up. So perhaps, I was thinking while reading the book that perhaps these women were the first who were taken to one of these centers, which is run by the Hindu helplines and stuff. So what was the methodology? Now that you spoke about it, do tell us about the methodology.
So just to say that, each of these conspiracy theories, it's like a bottomless pit. And part of the reason is that these conspiracies have never been properly defined. So love jihad, when it first surfaced in Kerala in 2009, in the case that I just spoke about, at that time, the allegation was that Muslim men were seducing Hindu women in order to convert them to Islam, which was part of a larger conspiracy where Muslims were trying to effect demographic change, which is make India a Muslim nation, increase their numbers, right? So from that definition, now we are at a point where when a Muslim man kills his Hindu partner, that's love jihad. So how is it that by killing a woman you're achieving the larger goal of like increasing Muslim numbers? So the definitions keep changing. That keeps the whole thing so fluid that the minute you disprove X, they say no. But we're not talking of X, we're talking of Y. So in this kind of fog, we were like, what is the best way to go about it? So we decided to approach well-established Hindutva organizations and say, hey, can you tell us what is love jihad? So we asked that question to a VHP person. And we said, is there any sort of list you can provide us? And as it turned out, that they had a list. So the VHP, in its official magazine, had published a list of love jihad cases, and that then proved to be a data set that we fact-checked. So, we really, otherwise it's really impossible, because in this country, every day a new case is popping up. So the best way we thought was to ask those who are making these claims to provide a finite data set that we could check.
Dr. Vasu, if I could come to you now. Karnataka has seen a lot of controversies with this love jihad term. When did this start in Karnataka? Was Kerala really the first case? Or I think it was Kerala which started with Achyutanand then also stepping in at this point when Justice Shankaran's verdict came. But how did it play out in Karnataka? I think it's on.
Yeah, it's on, yeah. No, actually, the initial incidents were in coastal area, but they did not enter the court. But that was there because, our Bangalore picks up things very soon from Kerala, and not just from there, also from, say, other parts of India. So that is the place, and initially we used to hear this moral policing thing. So it started during the first tenure of Yediyurappa. And there were some famous incidents like the Swagat Hotel incident in Bangalore and the Bantwal BC Road incident. And there the Muslim boys were beaten up, but it was also the other way. The Swagat Hotel incident was actually the reverse. The Popular Front people, they beat up the Hindu guy who was with a Muslim girl. So it was there, basically there, but later it came to Bangalore, as you rightly said, that there was a case in Karnataka High Court where the judge was very much like the Kerala judge. But we don't, I mean, still it is not in the popular, it's not there that everybody believes it, that it's happening. But in Bangalore, it is definitely there. That now that division is clear, that no two young, people, men and women can go together. And it is also very frightening that Muslim institutions are coming up, that are more and more Muslim education institutions where only Muslim boys and girls study there. So this is something because they also feel that to give religious education, you just cannot send them to other institutions. Only, it is from the KG to the medical institutions that this division is clearly there. But it is mostly a coastal phenomena still, yeah.
Just one quick thing on Karnataka, since you brought it up, that as Vasu mentioned, that there was this original case in Karnataka as well, which was around the same time, the same year, in fact, as the Kerala case, went through the same process, went to the High Court orders the DGP to conduct a probe, the probe finds nothing, the case is closed, there is no evidence the police finds of any so-called love jihad in Karnataka. So in that sense, both Kerala and Karnataka, which were the original patient zeros of this conspiracy, both have put an end to it, and yet it perpetuates decades later.
But did Kerala really put an end to it? For example, the Hadya case. Yeah. Again, it was from Kerala, where the court did almost the same thing, right? It kept telling Hadya, I think one judge told her to go back, one judge told her not to go. So I just want to ask specifically about love jihad. What has been the role that courts played? The mischief that courts played, not just in Kerala, but elsewhere. What have you noticed about that?
No, look, as Supriya just outlined, in many of these cases, when typically what happens is you have an interfaith couple and the parents move the court because the couple elopes and then you file a habeas corpus and it goes to court. The courts in the initial stages obviously actually perpetuated the idea of love jihad, where Justice Shankana actually said that we must probe this phenomenon of love jihad and Romeo jihad without actually citing where he got that information from. Where did he actually even get those terms from? Subsequently, like you mentioned in the Hadya case, it's not that the court necessarily said love jihad, but the fact that you had a Hindu girl who had converted and was clearly indicating that it was consensual, instead of dismissing the case and letting her have her agency, to actually once again order that she be placed in the custody of her parents, etc., then the NIA comes in. So here a certain conservatism of the Indian judiciary kicks in, right? Which then feeds into the wider Hindutva conspiracy that this is all part of some kind of plot to try to sort of convert Hindu women. So I think the conjunction of the two has been extremely worrying, but at the same time we must add that there have been progressive judgments as well. When the Hadya case, for example, went to the Supreme Court threw it out, saying that, people have a right to practice freedom of religion and a right to make their own choices. So it's not just a one-way street. There have been positive outcomes as well, like in the Kerala case, where it was ultimately overturned by another judge.
But the worrying thing is that there is no consistency in the judicial verdict.
Exactly.
Right? It just keeps everyone on tenterhooks. And again, since we're talking about the judiciary and love jihad, just I think in January, there was the order of the Allahabad High Court where it denied police protection to 9 interfaith couples because it said that you've not complied with the provisions of the conversion law. So the UP conversion law, which now also applies to conversion for marriage, has provisions which says that couples, anyone who's seeking to convert for marriage needs to give a 60-day notice to the district magistrate. And the district magistrate will order a police inquiry, which essentially means that if you're an interfaith couple battling parental approval, the police is going to come and tell your parents that, your daughter is going to sort of marry this Muslim man, right? And of course, that's the end of the whole matter. So the fact that these 9 couples somehow managed to escape that and get married and are now coming to court and seeking protection, and the court saying, you've not complied with the law, it just shows that the court is not a reliable protector of freedoms. And I just want to add that, again, this order, what I found very striking is that, let's admit it, like many of us have majoritarian privilege, and we think that none of this is going to touch us. That this, whatever is happening, even if we are liberals and we think this is absurd and it's ridiculous, we don't really pay too much attention to it because, again, this idea that how does it really impact my life? The fact is that this is all going to impact everybody's life. The Allahabad High Court order, for instance, in those 9 interfaith couples, there are 2 couples where the man is Hindu and the Muslim woman has converted to Hinduism. There's another couple where both have converted to Buddhism. So it's pretty evident that this so-called love jihad law was brought in basically to, kind of, although they don't explicitly state it in the language of the law, but it's evident through the rhetoric, the fact that the Chief Minister, Adityanath, has said it explicitly, that this was brought in to prevent Hindu women from converting to Islam and marrying Muslim men. But the reverse is happening. It's affecting everybody. In the same way, like the Uniform Civil Code of Uttarakhand, right? Like all those who were gleefully waiting for an end to Muslim polygamy, see what's happened. It's also brought in through the back door legal regulation of live-in relationships. So now your neighbor can, report on you having a live-in relationship, and if you break up with your live-in partner, well, you have to go and inform the registrar. It's now, this is going to come home and affect everybody.
No, so it does affect everybody. I was actually telling Supriya this yesterday. A friend of mine lives in Bangalore. She was getting married in Payanur in Kerala. She is a Hindu woman. She was marrying a Muslim man. So when you have an interfaith marriage, you have to go to the registrar and first register. For 30 days, they will put up the application on the website. So you can just go and download all the applications. So what the RSS and VHP were doing is that they would download the applications. They will only look for Muslim men and Hindu, because the womb matters, right? It doesn't matter the other way for them. Muslim men and Hindu women. And they actually put out, my friend and around 50 others, applications on Facebook saying these are all examples of love jihad, women who have been trapped by Muslim terrorists. And a lot of people turned up at her house asking her parents that, oh my God, your daughter's name is there. She then went to the Supreme Court with a PIL saying that Kerala government has to stop putting these applications online. But the court said that you don't have the locus standi for a PIL, it has to be shifted to an affidavit.
Yeah, but Dhanya, this is there in Karnataka for quite some time, in Special Marriage Act.
Exactly.
So you will go to registrar, sub-registrar and ask for a certificate, but they deny it and they say that we are putting out this notice that you both who are residing in these 2 addresses, one of the addresses should be in the locality of that particular sub-registrar, and only after a month you will get a certificate. So previously people used to bribe the sub-registrar and make him not to put that notice, but now it has become difficult, and everything becoming online is also a problem like this. Yeah.
But just to add to this, that we are, of course, still talking about love jihad, and I hope we'll also get a chance to talk about some of the other themes we've explored in the book, because though this is the most catchy topic, we're talking of a whole spectrum of different kinds of ways in which this idea is perpetuated. And while we can certainly hold the courts to account and so on and so forth, it's important to keep coming back to the fundamental aspect of what is going on here, right? This book is also about a moment that we are in as a country, where we're witnessing this extraordinary shift, where you can have a cabinet resolution passed congratulating the inauguration of a temple, of a Hindu temple. Now, what we are trying to do is, in a sense, indicate the undergirding, the architecture which actually enables that shift, right? And that is happening precisely because, and at the risk of repetition, these ideas and theories are being amplified by power. So when you have that shift, then the fact that whether the courts fall in line or the media falls in line, and suddenly all these theories which have all been floating around in the fringe get this oxygen.
And is Gulihatti Shekhar the perfect example of that, where the media, then the legislation, the government, everything comes together to then pass the anti-conversion law? You have actually, and the Christian attack, because the book does deal with attacks on Christians. So Gulihatti Shekhar, would you say the entire episode which happened in those 4 or 5 months, where first we had all those attacks on the pastors, then we had Gulihatti Shekhar coming in the Karnataka Assembly and crying.
Yes.
Then they said, yes, let's bring the anti-conversion law. So where everything is coming together.
No, absolutely. That's just one example of a case where an MLA makes an allegation. Normally, these allegations come from, more of the kind of the fringe Hindutva outfits. You have an MLA making an allegation. But I would say virtually everything that we've examined in the book, whether it is the idea of this population jihad, the idea that, there's a plot to sort of overwhelm the Hindus through overbreeding, or Christian conspiracy, or the idea that Muslims are granted special favors, are now routine fodder for both campaign speeches, for, like assemblies are passing laws about it. So I think that's the fundamental shift, because remember now, Dhanya, that these guys have been power for 10 years. And to continue to make the argument that despite having the most Hindu-centric regime this country has seen, you still have to convey the sense that Hindus are under threat. How do you do that? And that's why you need to constantly perpetuate the sense of threat, of fear, of this, imagined enemy.
Yeah, I mean, we just have to keep reiterating that all of these conspiracy theories are being amplified by top-ranking politicians, starting right from the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister has endorsed the Kerala story, which is a film on so-called love jihad. The Home Minister goes around saying that, there's land jihad. I mean, there's so many jihads we didn't even have a chance of getting into. The Assam Chief Minister, Himant Biswa Sarma, has come up with what I find is the most astounding claim, which is fertilizer jihad. So it's like routine now, and it's not even election time. It's like a steady drone. UP Chief Minister Aditya Nath he stopped short of saying Muslims are overbreeding, but he said that if one community continues to grow, it's going to create demographic imbalance, essentially population jihad. So virtually, like, the topmost political leaders of this country are responsible for the conspiracy theories that we are now debunking.
Top-ranking politicians and top-ranking media.
Correct.
Both.
And I fear the shelf life of all this has become so long, right? For example, you were mentioning the Supreme Court did give Hadia her rights, and she went back and she lived with her husband. The story again took off 2-3 months ago. I don't know how many of you noticed, but the right wing was full on saying that Hadia got divorced and she got married again, and this is the second love jihad for her, and how she's trying to go live with her fathers. When we called her, she was like, yes, I got divorced, I got married again. What is anybody's problem? But this never stops. This has a very long shelf life, again taken up by politicians. So, yeah, and generally everybody. But how do we really combat this? The book is one way of combating, but I feel like the volume from the other side is so huge that how do you actually combat this?
So, Supriya indicated that I'm meant to answer this question because this is not an easy question to answer. So, and we get asked this a lot. Look, frankly, these are political fictions, right? It's not really our place as journalists to be able to take on something like this. In the ordinary course, there would have been many more media institutions that would have been taking this on. And collectively, if all of us in quote-unquote normal times, not in this time when 90% of the media has completely caved, had been pushing back, then you might have seen some kind of response. Like this may have led to some diminishing. We don't know. But today there's just a handful of us. There's these small islands of fact checkers. So it's simply beyond our remit. But again, as I said, the responsibility is no longer just solely with the media and so on and so forth in civil society when these fictions are coming from power. So you have like a political opposition. If they're really serious about, as they keep saying, opening this mohabbat ki dukaan and nafrat ka bazaar, then they should also go out and take these fictions on, because they have at least compared to us, they have the wherewithal, they have the pipelines, they have the manpower, they also have communication channels to be able to push back. But we don't see enough of that. We don't see enough pushback from the Election Commission. We don't see enough pushback from law enforcement. Because listen, these are, potentially these are statements that can invoke penal provisions, right? They violate hate speech laws, they violate laws pertaining to communal amity. Once in a rare blue moon, you'll see some, a case or an FIR that's lodged against A or B, and we know what happens to that. Once in a rare blue moon, you'll see, for example, recently the National Broadcasting Authority has penalized 4 or 5 of these news channels for perpetuating love jihad and some of these other, as Supriya said, this entire kind of buffet of jihads. But that's after thousands and thousands of hours of programming, you'll have an order about 4. So it's a very difficult question to address. But as I said, it's no longer just about us. It has to be everyone else who's concerned about what's happening to democracy, especially, I would say, our political parties stepping up.
Dr. Moss, you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I think that, as Sreenivasan put it, it is not possible only for media houses to tackle it. We should break these barriers. I can just give an example of how we did it during 2023 election. You know about this Urigowda Nanjegowda thing. Urigowda and Nanjegowda are 2 Vakaliga fictional characters who supposedly killed Tipu Sultan. So this was picked up by everybody, and we got a tip from BJP AT cell that Mr. Prime Minister is going to speak this in Mandya. So we had to address it. So Basavaraj, who is sitting here, so he actually created the first video in which he said Urigowda Nanjegowda took birth in 2017, October 27th in a BJP blog. So that is how we started the campaign. But that was not enough. At that time, Edina was not known to many people. We became famous only after we became astrologers and predicted the election outcome. So then we had to take that to Mandya. We pressurized some of the Vakaliga intellectuals to go and conduct press meets in Mandya, Mysore and Hassan and challenge the right-wingers that let us openly debate it. So then we made it a common sense in Mandya. And it so happened finally that the day when, the previous day of Modi coming there, they put out this arch of Urigowda Nanjegowda arch to welcome Mr. Modi, and there was a big protest. And in the midnight, they had to remove it. Even that was not enough. Even after that, ministers started speaking. Then people who are around that Vakaliga mutt, some of them went to Vakaliga Seer, the Nirmalananda Swamiji, and told him that it is a disgrace to you that you are sitting quiet. Then he had to actually summon 2 Vakaliga ministers from previous government and told them that if you are continuing it, you will lose our votes and it should end. So there was a campaign like this. It started from our media house. We initiated that because maybe people thought that it is Urigowda Nanjegowda is real. But when Basavaraju said, who also happened to be the president of Vakaliga Sangha Employees Association, you need such faces also to put out things. So I am of the opinion that we should actually run campaigns like this, which should involve civil society movements. It should not just be confined to the media houses. I'm not for such boundaries at all, and I feel that we are biased and we are against the right-wing media ecosystem. We are not neutral. This is not the time to be neutral. So I don't think that love jihad issue can be the first one to start any campaign. Identify some soft issues first, target them most, and make it a common sense that whatever they say is lie, then come to the difficult issues.
But are you sure Urigowda and Nanjegowda are not going to make a comeback?
It may come back, but because BJP is sure that unless they cover south of Karnataka, Vakaliga belt, they cannot rule Karnataka. So they are trying hard now that Mr. Gowda is also with them. They need some nostalgic thing also to catch hold of Vakaligas. It will come back.
Supriya, population, love jihad is more of a recent phenomenon, right? Population jihad, though the word may have not been used.
Have you listed the number of jihads that are there?
No, actually there's a very interesting Twitter thread.
We have a sequel that...
Yeah. There's an interesting Twitter thread of all the jihads. One guy had listed everything. Around 30 are there, I think. So, fertilizer jihad was took the cake. Yeah. So, my question is population jihad, though the name perhaps was not used then, is one of the oldest tropes, right? That the Muslim population is just increasing a lot. I've seen that Scroll, for example, has written this multiple times. Whenever I search as to what is the truth about Muslim population, your 2 or 3 articles keep coming up. but the entire ecosystem is there running this whole trope, right? What did you guys discover as, how does it work? What did you guys discover as you went behind these people?
Yeah, so as you say, population jihad, even though the term may be of more recent origin, the idea has been around forever, and it's been around since at least 1909, when an influential figure of the then nascent Hindu right movement prophesied that Muslims will not just overtake Hindus will turn extinct. So we're in like 2024, and far from being extinct, Hindus are 1 billion strong in India. Like 8 of 10 people in India are Hindu. 1909. So that's like over 100 years ago. So just to say that those predictions have been around forever. In 2003, when the BJP was in power at the center, the government actually funded a study which created this projection saying that by 2025, they created this chart saying that, and they use the term Indian religionists. Basically, they were including all religious communities other than Muslims and Christians, because these are religions that have originated outside India. They said that they've shown this graph, and they're saying that by this time, the Hindu population will be here, and like basically making a prediction that very soon in 60 years, again, Hindus will become a minority community in India. And they based this, of course, on 2001 census figures. By the time the 2011 census figures rolled in, like their graph, as you can see, was all wrong. I mean, within a decade, it was proved that they were incorrect, but they still maintain their stand and they've, sort of not taken it back. And again, that maybe now there are no longer debates about projections, but the idea continues to circulate, as you said. For us, this was actually a relatively easy conspiracy theory to take on, because there's a lot of data. There's census data to look at, there are fertility rates to examine, and all of those point to the fact that, yes, Muslim fertility rates are higher than those of Hindus. Even now, contraceptive use among Muslims is lower than that of Hindus, but the rate of decline is much faster, which means in a few decades, we're not going to see this vast divergence. And most demographers predict that population of both the communities will stabilize by the end of this century. So it was actually an easy theory to take on, because we, had like all these numbers at our disposal. We had data, and this is all government data. This is census data. The fertility rate comes from the National Family and Health Survey. So in that sense, it was something fairly easy to debunk.
So in the book, there is a section where you speak about the Prime Minister's speech, where he said in Uttar Pradesh that we should have more electricity during Diwali and not during Eid. And you guys have looked at the electricity output and then realized that what the Prime Minister said, mostly as usual, is not true. So my question is, when it comes from the Prime Minister, right, some of these lies, which either is outright or not outright, how difficult does it then become to even disprove it? Because it's coming right from the top.
Right. So actually, in that particular case, the Prime Minister played it a little cleverly. He sort of said ki hona chahiye at the same time. But Yogi Adityanath actually directly said that more electricity was supplied by the previous government during Eid compared to Diwali, which again goes back to the point that we were making earlier about the platforming of what may seem like a crackpot assumption. In our introduction, we actually refer to a WhatsApp forward, which says that in the fictional village of Ramgarh in the film Sholay, that more electricity was supplied for namaz while Thakur was roaming around in the dark with a lantern, because the writers of Sholay were Muslim, Salim Javed. So this is now a WhatsApp forward, and you would justifiably debunk, you just won't take it seriously, except cut to, in a sense, the Prime Minister's dog whistle, and then Yogi Adityanath saying it more specifically. And as you pointed out, in fact, Supriya did that data-heavy crunching to actually suggest something else, for which you can read the book. But it's true that, coming back to our wider point, that the idea of such, inflammatory and divisive claims being platformed by those at the highest tiers of power make it more challenging, because even if we can put out a story and we can try to push back against it, it will never get the kind of traction, especially in today's media environment, that it'll get when it comes from power. And it doesn't just stop at the level of rhetoric. This is translating into concrete consequences for minorities particularly, because firstly, and we point this out in our chapter, the allotment to Muslims or to minority-related schemes is minuscule. It's less than, I think, 0.1% of the union budget. It was always very small, and even under the UPA, and it's come down even further under the Modi government. This is amongst the most backward communities in this country. So the idea that they've got special favors can be countered through countless statistics. And yet, every other day, we'll see some particular scheme, some allotment to a university, which is a Muslim university, or something which pertains for minority welfare, receive further cutbacks. So it's not just that these are claims that are made in the air. This is translating into very real consequences.
Yeah, if I may just add that, to your point about what do you do when the Prime Minister makes these claims, again, the debate in newsrooms is, like the conventional understanding is you report the news. So you report what people in important positions have said, and you report it straight. But if you just report it straight, then you're basically just amplifying completely false claims. And that becomes actually like pretty tricky when it comes to hate speech. So I remember around the time of the citizenship protest, this was the winter of 2019. In early 2020, temperatures were very high in Delhi because there were all kinds of hate speeches being made by BJP MPs, one of whom said that, that if you vote for those who support Shaheen Bagh was this major protest site where, Muslim women were leading a protest against the Citizenship Act. He said, then, your sisters will be raped, right? So again, we as a newsroom, we were like, how do we need to report this because this is hate speech? Should we say in the headline hate speech? How do we contextualize this? Because again, this is unlike many of the theories which can be debunked. This is just inflammatory like speech. And like, how are you going to debunk a claim like this? And just to say that, and a small independent newsroom like ours, which is very careful about the way it reports the news, we're also having these debates. And so most of the media, like even if, again, we have spoken about how a large section of the mainstream media is towing the establishment line. I feel like it's even there are gradations where some think that they're just abiding by time-tested journalistic principles. The Prime Minister has said this in an election speech in UP, so you just report it, right? So I'm just saying there are real journalistic dilemmas that this time is throwing up, even for those who want to do the right thing.
But I have a question to add to that. Supriya is talking about a nicer time, I feel, where people were just reporting things. I think now journalists are indulging in hate speech themselves. If you take Karnataka for an example, we have had so many news channels calling Muslims termites, and different words were used, right? And which is why they got fined. And I think parasites, that's the word they used. When the hijab controversy happened, there was clear hate
Termites
speech.
was Amit Shah.
Amit Shah, yes. Here it was
Union
Paris,
Home
yeah.
Minister.
Yes. So I think many media houses have gone a step ahead, and they themselves are generators of hate speech. You would have examples to cite, right?
Yeah, there are many, but we in EDINA, we report what others have also reported. Like, it is not just that we report what Modi has said in a speech, but that today Suvarna News has reported something like this, which is wrong. So they are also party here. It is not that we don't report what other people have said. This was an unwritten rule that any media house will not report the wrongdoings of any other media. We do this. I mean, it is quite evident in Karnataka, in two murder charge sheets, media houses were named. In Gauri Lankesh and M.M. Kalburgi's murder charge sheets, these people are named. Because all the killers and conspirators in Gauri Lankesh murder case, they had a video of Gauri Lankesh which was taken out of context, and somebody had reported it, which actually was shown to him many times. to Parshuram Wagmore that she deserves to be killed, right? And same with M.M. Kalburgi. Two so-called mainstream media houses, they, reported Kalburgi's statement in a very nonsensical way. And a scholar like M.M. Kalburgi had to apologize in a live show for a statement which he never made in his life. And the killer of M.M. Kalburgi in his mobile had that video. And it is there in the charge sheet. So when that is the case, I'm very much happy that I did not expect this, that Sreenivasan Jain is naming and shaming people. He's taking names. That is what we have to do. I don't think that there's any neutrality like that. And one of the senior journalist friends in English media once asked me that you are biased. I said I'm biased. You are taking campaigns. Yes, we are taking campaigns. Then he said, you cannot take a campaign being a media person. I said, do you take a campaign against child marriage or not? You take it. And you take campaign against, say, sati system. Then we are actually walking towards a genocide. And the person who sits next to me in metro wants to hide his name. And this is the country, and we are sure we know what is happening, and you just want to be neutral. No, there's no neutrality. So we take campaigns. We do take campaigns. I must also admit that we work with them. But it is more and more frustrating if you go closer to them.
In fact, the book has a lot of examples of how even they have brought in laws and they have added to the ecosystem, right?
Yeah.
In certain small
Yeah,
ways.
but I'm not here to say that Congress and BJP are same. No, one is programmatic, other one is pragmatic. They may also say lies, but it is not that they have a program to do it. They're just for the sake of gaining something on some day, they'll do that. But that is not their program. BJP is programmatic communalism, programmatic liars and all this. So we are not neutral. We are biased.
2024, if BJP wins the election. Okay, I'll still say if. Because you started by saying that this is like a long-term project. It's not about elections anymore, right? That means they're going to be there for third term together. Would these conspiracy theories then perhaps come down a bit, or do you think that it would again peak? What is your thought about this?
No, as I said, this is not just about these individual theories. This is about a political project, an ideological political project, which goes back over 100 years. They've been working to build up to this moment, right? That moment has arrived. And they're not going to give up now that they've achieved where they want this country to be. The needle still has to move for them. We're a vast, fragmented, diverse country. It's not this kind of homogeneous vision that they have. And all of this is part of that. So I don't see any change at all. People keep thinking, and this is the point I made at the beginning, that you think that you campaign in poetry and you govern in prose. That once you come to power, power sort of mellows you. We've seen the exact opposite. They have to keep up the idea of perpetual majority grievance. That is fundamental to the existence of the Hindu right, of the BJP. And you can only sustain grievance if you go on creating some fictional jihad or conspiracy or this or that. So we've already seen legislation being passed for at least these sets of fictions. There could be 20 other things, right? Like they're already testing the waters with saying halal jihad, or like Supriya saying fertilizer jihad, or some other, any aspect of Muslim existence or Muslim identity can be then criminalized, weaponized for political gain, passed into law. So I have a very pessimistic view on this. I don't see anything fundamentally changing unless there's a political shift, and maybe that'll lead to some change, but otherwise, not really.
I mean, there are new states to conquer. There's still, many places where the BJP is sort of, still struggling to establish its presence. So we still have many decades of work that will happen in these states, and this is the next frontier. They've already used these conspiracy theories to cement their votes in North India, in Western India. They're trying very hard in the South and the East.
In fact, if you look at it, there's an entire list of jihad to do with food. I just thought jihad, halal jihad. There are so many. It's to do with everything that Muslims do, right? From their culture to food. Before I go to the audience, I want to ask something which is not precisely about the book, but to both of you, because you are coming from North India. I mean, I do eat Supriya's head quite a bit about this. But moving beyond this whole thing that Hindus are under attack, the Ram Mandir inauguration has also brought this whole other narrative of victory, right? Of Hindus being victorious, and this whole projection, the Prime Minister being on top of that victory. I mean, in Karnataka, yes, we have seen some sort of jubilation, and even in the other southern states. But for this audience here, who are from here, can you explain to us like what is happening in the north?
North Indian, go for it.
Well, you're the one who went to Ayodhya.
So both of you, yes. I mean, I'm really curious.
No, but I've heard
Sometimes I
stories
feel I live in a different
you,
India.
Why don't you talk about the kind of, the range of people you saw in Ayodhya? So to this point that it's just North India, Sreenivasan said that he met people from Andhra Pradesh, from Karnataka.
They're all going on the train.
Yeah. So that's kind of as.
No, so I'd gone to shoot a documentary on the day of the inauguration. I was shooting the documentary on the day of the inauguration, and so the day of the inauguration itself, there was a kind of lockdown because of security, and then the next day, you couldn't actually enter Ayodhya. There was such a huge rush of people, and we were sort of talking to people, and somehow I had this assumption, maybe this is a little bit of leftover liberal delusion, that most of these people are from broadly in and around the north or Uttar Pradesh. But no, it was just, there were people from virtually every corner of India, from Telangana, from Odisha, from Maharashtra, etc., etc. And during the course of our interviews, Modi was being compared to Ram himself. They said Ram has descended in him. Then someone said, no, he's Vishnu. So there was this whole competition as to which deity of the pantheon he belongs to. And I just remember standing there thinking, like the only thing that was going through my head was 400 seats, So like this whole idea that something is still going to shift and there'll be like some kind of. So I think it was fairly evident what that moment has meant for them, and particularly what it's going to mean for this election.
But do you think there'll be a shift in the narrative now, that it's of jubilant Hindus, victorious Hindus, rather than from Hindus who are always subjugated and under attack by jihad? But Dr. Vasu, you want to add something?
No, I mean, you know that we've been doing surveys every month, and in Karnataka there are no additional votes for BJP because of Ram Mandir. So that's the good news.
I mean, they swept Karnataka last time, so even if they don't get additional votes, even if they get the votes they got, they will lose. We're going to have the same outcome.
They will lose.
Yeah, so we'll move to some of the audience questions. We'll pass around the mics. Yes. There's a question front row.
Hi. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay, so my question is about insecurity and nationalism. Nationalism obviously thrives on insecurity. But when there are these victories, policy victories, and victories which the BJP has promised to achieve for a very long time, whether it's the Ram Mandir, Article 370, soon perhaps the UCC, how do you sort of keep perpetuating the insecurity? How do you perpetuate the idea that, we are victims of something? And I do, if I can be greedy, I have a second question too. This is about, because we are journalists here, role of the media. When you don't have a population that wants to pay for news, that wants to subscribe to independent news, how do you sort of maintain an independent newsroom? I won't name the organization that we work for, but we do run government ads almost on a daily basis on our front page. So that influences.
What is your name?
My name is Kshitij.
Okay. Just everyone please introduce yourself before you ask the question. In fact, his first question was what I was asking before I hand over to how can this run parallelly? On one side you have the victory narrative, right? Where you have built the Ram temple, you have brought in Article 370, you have bombed Pakistan, done so many great things, and you're also the victims.
But
How do you
that's
run both
classic.
these?
That's kind of the playbook that we see around the world. Like all authoritarian regimes are capable of running these two parallel tracks. I mean, that is actually what keeps them in power, because they constantly foster this sense of insecurity. I mean, Israel is such a good example, right? Like, sort of always talk about how you're under attack. And so Hindus are under attack from religious minorities. Yet our leader is ensuring that we're going to take on this challenge. And I think that's going to continue. There is going to be no let up. As I said, like there's still new states that need to be conquered. So, and whatever territories are gained need to be maintained. So this is a never-ending state of being.
I'll just give you a small example from when the book actually came out and we started, publicizing it, and then we also made some short videos debunking some of this stuff, especially Love Jihad, which seems to be the one thing everyone is fixated on, more than the other theories. My Twitter timeline is a complete, like a garbage fire. It's just full of hundreds and hundreds of basically Hindutva-centric handles tweeting countless examples of, look at this case, and look at that, and look at that. And if you read it, you won't actually think that we have the strongest Hindu government that we've had for a decade, that Hindus are actually under great threat. So you can be both completely safe and also be completely under threat. That's the sleight of hand to which you have to give these guys credit.
I mean, the Prime Minister himself says 1,000 years of slavery, right? So, I mean, the idea is that, yes, we have emerged victorious, we have inaugurated the Ram temple, but there's still Kashi and there's still Mathura and there's, 100 more places, right? So that's how it's done. Like, Gyan Vapi, it's like kind of never ending. They don't stop.
In fact, my colleague Shivani is here. She recorded a video from South Bangalore where they were shouting Kashi Mathura Baki Hai in a normal housing association where they had gathered for the Ram temple inauguration.
But we talk about Kashi and Mathura, but the Jains, Vishnu Jain, who's the main lawyer, there are women petitioners in the Gyan Vapi case in Varanasi, but Vishnu Jain is the lawyer and the moving spirit behind that case, also the moving spirit behind the Mathura case, and we discovered 100 other such cases. So they're laying claim to 100 religious places, the same lawyer.
His second question was about independent newsrooms.
Dhanya, you should take that.
What was your question? But I'm just little tired of how do independent newsrooms survive?
Yeah, so when you have a population which does not want to pay for news,
then that population has to just do with Times of India and Republic and NDT. I'm sorry, that population has no other option. And I'm not responsible for the population anymore. Because if nobody wants to pay, how do we pay salaries? How do we have a newsroom? No businessman wants to pay for news. It's really difficult to run news organizations now. We can't even take grants. I can just go on and on. But the population has to feel responsible, right? And I hope that sense of responsibility comes. When all of you leave here, you will just take your phone, go to scroll.in and take a subscription. You'll go to the newsminute.com, take a subscription. And we keep telling people this because there is really no other way out. There's absolutely no other way out. All of us are going project by project. That's how we are functioning now. We have one project on, let's say, manual scavenging. They have some common ground project. It's just project by project. So,
yeah. We say, well, this will cost you less than a coffee. Please take it. That's just we keep appealing. And the good side is that we've been running a membership program now for over a year, and it's been very heartening to see people are becoming Scroll members. But yeah, I wish at a faster rate.
No, so I tell people, close your eyes and imagine there is only Republic, there is only Times Now, there is only India Today. Open your eyes in terror and go subscribe. That's the only way I can actually now convince people to do it. What else, right? Yeah, the next.
Maybe take a question in the back, please.
Yeah.
Let's go back in front.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Pooja. I don't know if this comes in what you've done, but what came first, the egg or the chicken? So does the BJP kind of tap in on the insecurities of the population and then give it a name and kind of legitimize the whole thing? Or do they start the insecure? What did you find in your research?
Thanks, Pooja. I'm not sure I've understood the question. I mean, some of these conspiracy theories predate the formation of the BJP. So it's this large Sangh Parivar, and actually even before the Sangh Parivar came into existence, as I mentioned in 1909, and a sort of army doctor was writing a tract prophesizing that Muslims will overtake Hindus and Hindus will be extinct. But the firepower came from the organized Hindu right. So, Hindu Mahasabha, then RSS, and then BJP. And as the Hindu right started gaining political power, that's when they had access to the state apparatus. And that's what we're seeing. So, again, anti-conversion laws, for instance, the first anti-conversion laws were passed in the 60s. There was no BJP around then. But the slew of anti-conversion laws, like the pace picked up when BJP started forming governments in states. Mm-hmm. So I think of, I don't remember the exact numbers, but like in the last 2 decades, we've seen like at least 7 anti-conversion laws all passed by BJP governments. So just to say that these ideas have been around when this was a more amorphous sort of a beast.
They just cook the chicken and the egg.
Yeah.
It's always there. Yeah.
No, I think, sorry, just to quickly intervene for a second, I think that's if I got the question correctly, Pooja's asking a very fundamental question, that were we always this kind of society, and that you have an agency or an agent that comes and activates this, or was it actually manufactured? And, someone like perhaps Ram Guha sitting in the front row may be better placed to answer that, because I think this goes back to a much more civilizational question, right, of the country, the nature it was founded. And these are questions that democracies are grappling with all over the world. Like even if you take what's going on in America, they're actually wondering, were we always like this? Or is it because someone comes in power and amplifies it, that you suddenly find this outpouring of all kinds of prejudices?
But even at a personal level, most of us are wondering, right? Were people around us like this? Were our family and friends always like this? Are we discovering it only now? So yeah, I guess that way Pooja's asking that, did the BJP just give firepower to the bigotry which was always there?
Yeah, no, it's a question that, I've mulled over, and I think we've all mulled over, and I have no answers to. And so maybe Ram can tell us from a historical perspective that, this idea that the Nehruvian state only papered over what was the true character of the country, or what, we were just sort of, power was keeping this at bay. And as power shifted, this is sort of opened up.
I mean, you put me on the spot, but I don't want to monopolize everything. So I'll try and give a perspective in maybe 3 minutes and stop me if I go to 4 and 5 and 10 and 15. I think there's several factors, long-range factors. One is the existence of Pakistan. So when we were divided on the basis of religion in 1947, to their credit, I mean, Gandhi and Nehru particularly had the moral courage and the political vision not to constitute India as a Hindu state. But because Pakistan was there, and Pakistan went more and more Islamic as the years progressed, there was always room for a constituency. The RSS started in 1925 in Hindu Mahasabha even earlier, to then say, "Dekho, unhone kya, hum bhi karenge." And then of course you have Bangladesh. And then you have Myanmar, which is, Myanmar and Sri Lanka, which are Buddhist majoritarian states persecuting non-Buddhists. So in that sense, we tried nobly, heroically, courageously to resist all of this, but there was this regional pressure. I don't want to go into America and Israel and Russia. That's that's the first thing. The second thing is that there is something special about Modi. And I think my hope, why I often say I'm depressed but not despairing. For many reasons. One, the South, and I think Dr. Vasu is right. We haven't, notwithstanding the people who have gone there, I think there's more, we are less prone to this kind of bigotry for multiple reasons. Not that we're immune, we're less prone because of historical reasons, and cultural reasons, the fact that we're a coastal culture, an entrepreneurial culture, we've had caste and gender reform movements. But the second thing, the left wing has consistently underestimated Modi. They've called him a demagogue. He's the most intelligent politician on earth. Because I've said it before, is Modi's greatest allies, political allies, are the Gandhi family. And not only because of their incompetence, because in an increasingly xenophobic and parochial world, they are half Christian, quarter Parsi, and all of that. But having said all this, these are larger things. But that original vision, which Nehru and Gandhi particularly embodied, first of all. I mean, what you guys are doing are fantastic. What Dr. Vasu has done, and his group have done, and his colleagues have done are fantastic. And we must keep on, because this will lead us, this Hindu pride, what I call paranoid triumphalism, is to encapsulate. It's both paranoid and triumphalist. I mean, history says that it will lead us. Look at where it's led Pakistan. Look at where it's led Sri Lanka. Where Sri Lanka would have been the most progressive country in South Asia had it not been for British colonialism. They have the same thing. This is the last point. It's very similar echoes. It's the only country where Sinhalese, the foreigners have come, the Tamils are taking away our jobs, so all of that. So I think all these factors have to be taken account of, but as a biographer, I know that Modi is central to this.
Okay.
And I think that gives us hope, because Shah and Adityanath can't carry it off in the same way.
Because Mr. Guha, I mean, the headline cannot be there's something special about Modi. What I want to ask is, in the book you also do talk about Rohingya Muslims and how a lot of what happens internationally also becomes part of this narrative of feeding into the fear, right? And that also continues.
So it's a weird thing that when the right here has to actually refer to examples outside our borders to bolster their case, in a strange way, it actually weakens their case, because that's the point we're making, that just because something has happened in Syria or Myanmar or somewhere else, doesn't necessarily translate into the Indian context. So they have, when you run out of evidence and you have to deflect, you either have to look outside our borders or you have to go 500 years back in history. So like even when you ask about, for example, the idea that there's this forcible conversion by Christians, where's the proof? They'll go back to the Inquisition in Goa. So that's not necessarily something which has any kind of great evidentiary value, right? But anyway, I think we have ton of questions. So.
Yes. They said back, front. So, now front, I guess, yes. Yeah.
I think the 2024 election.
No, yeah. There are two questions here, Vikram.
Yeah, let the mic come to them.
Okay, fine. Okay, please finish.
Slightly deviating from the subject. First, let me say, Sreenivasan, that I am a great fan of yours, and I have been missing you for a long time. And so, why and where were you hiding? I'm also a great fan of Ravish. I listen to his video every day without fail in the morning while doing my yoga, and I'm charged for the day. When are you going to start your YouTube channel?
Okay. Thank you so much for that. I am not hiding. Oops, I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened there. Maybe that's a kind of a Freudian, response. So one of the things I was doing was working on this book. I was doing some reporting for what I assumed was one of the last kind of quote-unquote independent news channels. I'm working on a documentary project which I can now share with Al Jazeera, which is looking at sort of 10 years of Modi. That's going to be out soon. And eventually, I think I'll end up in this great digital sort of Mahakumbh where all my friends and fellow co-panelists and others are there. And so hopefully...
The last resort now.
Yes, so I'll be around.
Yes.
I'm just curious to know whether the 2024 election is going to be decided by NRIs.
Decided by?
NRIs. Because, I mean, that's what Modi is saying, no? That dunya janti hai, and this pre-wedding bash that has happened has come really to lay the groundwork for 2024.
I'm not sure I fully understand.
I think I get the question. This whole Ambani, I didn't realize the pre-wedding bash. For a long time I thought it's a wedding. Then I realized it's a pre-wedding. So the pre-wedding bash also gives this thing, right, that India can host this kind of a wedding. India can get Rihanna for a wedding. And of course Modi ji has been saying that NRIs will play a big role. Yes. So she's saying, will that kind of dialogue about Vishwa Guru and how we are empowering Indians, etc.
So I'm not sure about NRIs, but that narrative is influencing people living in India, like Indian voters, right? You don't have to be an NRI. again, polls have shown that people think that under Modi, India's global stature has risen, we've become Vishwa Guru, and for the first time, foreign policy is actually a factor in our domestic politics. Like the G20 summit a few months ago in Delhi was projected as if like this is a monumental achievement where Modi is walking and all world leaders are following him, right? So that has like real world consequences where sometimes when you talk to voters and they say that, you ask them about what the last 10 years have been like for them, I'll ask them about their job and wages, and they'll admit that things have been bleak and inflation is rising and their wages are going down, etc., etc. By the end of it, they will still say, but desh ka to naam uncha hua, like the country is now is doing very well on the global stage, and that seems to matter a lot to people.
No, I feel the elections are mostly decided by the poor. They are saving this country. Poor, not so educated people, they'll save this country. And some of them will be voting for Mr. Modi. So that's the reason that we may not have bright future in the near coming years. I'm saying this with some data. In this election, 2023 election, we did a survey and it was most accurate. And in that survey, like most of the other surveys, we found that Muslims are polarized on one side, and the other community which is more polarized than Muslims is Brahmins. But there was one more community which was voting for BJP even more than Brahmins. That was salaried middle class. So that's not a caste, but it's also a caste. So, and of course NRIs may also fit into the same category. And yeah, but still I have a lot of faith on the rural people, poor and not so educated people.
Also, let's stick to misinformation and disinformation also a bit in the questions. Yes. Can we pass the mic here?
I think they're going to the back. I think it's like a back and forth thing.
Okay. Hi, my name is Padmini. So my question is maybe more for the people who work in digital rather than print and TV. So just the use of love jihad or any jihad term, that kind of fetishization has contaminated the ecosystem, right? And as somebody else was saying, independent news has to survive, and there is a propensity to kind of algorithmically capture news so that it travels in a way that it contributes to profits. And so we have this very vicious cycle where you have Twitter hashtags going on to news conversations, debates, and then coming back around again. So my question is that how could have the digital press ignored this contamination? Was there, so the prison zero approach, which I think is a fantastic approach, do you think it would have not, like, if the genie could go back in the bottle, would that have been enough? Like just the one mention of it, was that enough to contaminate the whole ecosystem? Thanks.
So again, thanks. I'm not entirely sure I've understood the question. Just to say that, there are these kind of divisive claims that are circulating in society. There are conspiracy theories. And as journalists, we really cannot turn a blind eye to them. So to say that, we're sort of, or the media carries stories about love jihad because that algorithm means that there are going to be more readers on our site. I don't know, it's not...
Or is your question that should we have completely ignored it?
No, I think, well, no, obviously you can't and you shouldn't, but just the use of the phrase, because that's how the algorithm will take something and decontextualize.
Oh, no, so
Right.
we are not doing that for algorithm at all.
Yeah.
No, I know you're not, but what I'm saying is that is it possible, for example, talk about any jihad?
Yeah.
Using those words.
No, I completely see your point, because I do remember that in the very early days when this term gained currency, we did debate this, that should we even use it in headlines? Should we say something about interfaith couples instead? But, again, it's just that it has become part of everyday vocabulary, and we would really be kind of acting like, sort of burying our heads in the sand, right? Like, it's sort of impossible to ignore it, because again, what we try to do is we say so-called love jihad, and as Dhanya said, we as well at Scroll, we describe it every time. We say it's an allegation made by Hindutva groups, blah, blah, blah. we put it in quote marks. So we try to signal that this is a contentious term.
Yeah, so I have a similar take. For example, even 6 years ago, there would be a lot of liberals who will tell us, just ignore it, it'll go away. This is the biggest myth that we have lived in, that if we ignore something, it'll go away. Because that ecosystem is way stronger, right? So I'm saying, I can be that media house who ignores the word love jihad itself, but I'm a tiny, tiny fraction. Rather, I would be that media house which uses the word and tells my reader each time that this word means nothing, that it is falsehood. So every time I use the word, I would rather remind the reader, it's falsehood, it's falsehood. So at least, like for example, Raja Singh, the BJP MLA in Hyderabad. Every time we mention him as hate speech enabler Raja Singh, there is no other way in which we will describe him. Which means everybody who comes to news has to, because he is a hate speech enabler, there are only 100 cases against him.
I completely understand everything.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that your readers are not the people who we're trying to convert, right? Because it's coming out of it's decontextualized. It's coming more from the so-called hate speech. That's what I'm saying. So,
But see, when we write something, we can't have the goal of converting the reader. Every story brings about a change, but will it bring about a change cannot be the question that we have in our minds when we write that story. We write the story because the story has to be told. We write the story because the story has to be told in a certain way. Whether the reader takes it well, the reader converts, is up to the reader. But we cannot keep writing for a target audience anymore. We have to write for all, and we have to keep writing the same thing, because then, just like how love jihad has been said 100 times, we call it love jihad bogey 101 times. That's all we can do, right? But you want to add to that? No. Okay. Yes.
Hi, this.
Sorry, she has been putting her hands up for a long time. Yes, I have to take this question. Sorry. We'll come back to you.
Hi, I'm Sharma. So my question pertains to the communal hatred and love jihad that you've talked about in this book. So we have seen far-right or Hindutva organizations claiming that Muslims want to convert Hindu women. But what we have seen and what we saw, especially after the abrogation of Article 370, that these far-right groups claimed that we will now marry Kashmiri women and we will make sure that Kashmiri population is extinct. So did you take a look at that perspective of communal hatred in this book? And then when we talk about misinformation or the Hindutva ideology, it also is access to limited information or no information can also lead to it, because you've seen in far-flung areas or something, there are no cables. The only channels that come are the channels that government wants the people to see. So how do you think that reflects, and while you were researching about it, how did the access of media for people affected these ideologies? What did you see?
I couldn't quite follow the first part of your question. You were asking about the idea that there is an attempt by these Hindutva groups to try to actually convert Muslim women. Okay, so look, they make all kinds of alarmist and sensational claims. It's not that you have to take everything at face value, but there's a kind of sidebar to this, which is, when we kind of discovered it, it was amusing, because when we were filing RTIs to actually look at how many such cases of forcible conversions there are, which is in a sense part of one of the underpinning claims of love jihad, we actually found this example. I've written it down because I keep forgetting the name, that there was a lady called Abida Begum from Jharkhand who was married to a gentleman that she thought was Muslim, and then 4 years later she discovered his name was Buddhadev Thakur, and he'd been married for a long time to somebody else, and then she filed an FIR against him. And we are working on a separate investigative project on love jihad cases in Uttar Pradesh, and they've thrown up a number of such cases where you have the same phenomenon of Hindu men who've hidden their identities and have done so in order to be able to marry and woo and possibly even convert Hindu women. They've been accused of rape, they've been accused of kidnapping Muslim women, of abduction. And so that's the whole point, that this whole phenomenon of identity concealment, etc., is not unique to any one community. It happens tragically in this country. It's part of a kind of wider spectrum of gender crimes. So to communalize it is absurd.
The second question was about?
The access to media.
Yes. Like for example, in Arch, is it available everywhere? Or such she's asking about accessibility, right? They do access only certain media and they keep hearing the same thing on that.
So, of course, I mean, the mainstream media outreach is the mainstream media outreach. And the reason why we are in this moment of crisis is because all those channels have got contaminated. And there's really no solution till the proprietors and owners feel that they actually will have the courage to be able to look at the consequences of what they're doing. Now, the consequences are high, as independent networks like NDTV discovered, or even digital platforms, you operate with a high risk of reprisals from the state, which can take a whole spectrum of actions. But if you are seriously concerned about the state of our democracy and our society, then you have to have the appetite for those risks, and sadly, most of these media houses and proprietors don't seem to have that.
I was listening to R. Rajagopal, the editor at large in Telegraph 2 days ago. He was saying all these media houses keep talking about during emergency, my grandfather went to jail, my father went to jail. Why can't they just go to jail now? I mean, why are they scared now? So he was asking that fear cannot be what makes you not report, right? Yeah, the question here.
So this is for Dr. Basu. The book implies religious disharmony in the country, but compared to the havoc Islam is causing worldwide, would you not agree that India is relatively haven of harmony? Relatively.
No, considering the havoc?
That Islam is causing globally with all these Middle East...
Who do you want to ask?
Dr. Basu.
Okay. He's saying, considering the havoc that Islam has caused globally, isn't there actually harmony in India? Relative harmony.
No, what havoc that Islam has caused in the global arena, if you compare it with others, I don't agree with that point at all. Yeah, that's my answer.
Supriya, you have something to add? No. Okay. Yes.
I'm Aparna. Good evening. I'm a Professor Aparna Umar Raman, and I'm from the University of Singapore, National University of Singapore. It seems to me that everybody in India is confusing government with the political establishment. Because in Singapore, they had a single party system, number one. And secondly, isn't the administration or the administrative governance part of it, see, all the policies are consistent, whether it's on environment or economics or foreign policy. What is the great change really in human society with all the technology? Because now more and more technology is ubiquitous. So incidents like this, in the large scale of time, if we take 50 years, 100 years, we went through many cycles where the policies were consistent, because you have a government separate from the state, which is also with the society. There is no integration in that manner.
I think that is, okay.
So why are you confusing the two? Because here and India has always been spiritual. So this goes back thousands of years and it will continue. So why don't we take 100 or generational view and say in generations, ecology is a crisis.
I have to cut you short because we got a question. I think it is contestable that the government and the state and everything behave separately. The policies
the laws are not, the laws are being passed by the party in power, right? I mean, so I find it hard to maintain that distinction between the government and the ruling party, because the ruling party has all the powers to bring laws which are these so-called love jihad laws, the anti-conversion laws. We are going to see there's already a population bill that's in circulation in Assam. So yeah, like all of this flows directly from the fact that the BJP is in power, and it uses the state apparatus, it uses its legislative majorities, and it results in laws under which people are being arrested.
May I ask?
No, I completely agree. I don't think you can divorce the two at all. In fact, under this regime, we've seen a complete collapse of the distinction between the political establishment and between the government. And as for taking the 100-year view, in 100 years we'll all be dead. So it would be somewhat of a limited view. We are journalists, we are chroniclers of the first draft of history. So we have to report on the here and now.
Okay, we'll have one or two more questions and wrap up the session. Yes, two more questions. Okay. Okay, fine.
I'm Rajshekhar Akki. I'm glad that Dhanya asked this question to Sreenivasan Jain that, how do you counter this? So, usme you did, I totally agree with what you said, but there is something troubled me. Of course, you pointed out about to the political parties at large. They have the larger role to play in countering this thing. But I saw some othering there. वो अलग है, मतलब they are the people they should be doing, not us. They have the responsibility. So I've been a member of a political party, office bearer of a political party. I see some othering there. That gap has to be bridged. So we'll be having more answers, better answers. And at the end of the day, we have to take the help of this book and counter it, right? So वहाँ पे is an appeal also to bridge the gap. Thank you.
No. So just to clarify, I wasn't suggesting that we don't have a role as stakeholders in democracy to push back against this. That's precisely why we've written this book. And that's precisely why we've been doing the kind of journalism we've been doing. Her point was, how do you combat the tsunami of it?
The volume, yeah.
The volume. And I'm saying individually, as media practitioners and civil society members, it's very hard to do that when it is coming at a scale and it is backed by the might of the state. That's why you need other stakeholders to get involved. But our idea, which may run contrary to the sort of register of this evening, was not just only to reach out to an echo chamber, but was to actually reach out beyond the echo chamber. And that's why even the manner in which we frame this book is not written in the form of a polemic. I mean, we're all very angry about what's happening, but we've stuck to simply the facts. We've used the hard tools of conventional reporting, RTIs, parliamentary records, shoe-dealer reporting, etc., so that you get the claim and the counterclaim in a dispassionate manner, and you can make up your mind. You don't have to feel necessarily that we're preaching to you or we're trying to, in some ways, push a counter-propaganda. So that's, in a sense, part of a response to what you're saying, that we are very anxious about what's happening, and we're hoping that a book like this is an important intervention in pushing back.
Yeah, I mean, if I may just quickly add there, we were at the Church Street bookstores earlier in the evening, and a couple of people who came there said, oh, this is very brave. It's an act of courage that you've written this book. To be honest, I see it as an act of hope. It's basically a sign that we're still hopeful that it is possible to push back against these falsehoods. We're doing our bit as journalists by laying out the facts. The hope is that people will pick up the book and use it as part of the conversations that we're having in very intimate circles among family, friends, where very well-meaning, sensible Indians are also falling for these falsehoods, at the very least have begun to think there must be something to this, right? And so the idea is that, and I realize that those conversations are really tricky to get into, and I've often, shied away from having them. And so when I first heard Vasu and Mariam were working on this book, the idea was that, great, I can just gift this book to people because, the kind of calm, dispassionate conversations I'm not able to have, hopefully this book will give them those facts. And again, pushing back against this sort of volume, this tsunami of falsehoods, everybody has to do their bit. It's not just, people, again, we think of civil society, media, politicians, every citizen, each one of us, right?
No, that's why when I started, I said you should buy the book because it will help you, empower you for your next conversation. It's very simple. There's one case, then they go and probe the case, and they give you a conclusion. In fact, I have written down notes from the population jihad section because I come from Kerala, and in all our dinner table conversations, we have families saying that, have you been to Kozhikode? There are streets where Hindus cannot enter. Do you know Muslim population has increased so much? So I've actually written down all the studies that you have mentioned because next time I have more information to counter, right? So that's the only way. All of us have to do our bit. Everybody has to do their bit. That includes the media, political parties, civic society, everyone. Final question and we'll wrap up. Yes.
Sorry, one last question. Yes. My name is Shantanu. This is a question actually to Dr. Vasu. I think
apart from all these issues, isn't corruption, and is there any fiction of the lack of corruption in the book to the other two people? But to Dr. Vasu, did corruption, which is that 40% Sarkara issue here, did it make a change or a difference does your poll show that corruption made an issue?
That was one of the things. I don't say that was the issue, but that was definitely one of the issues. But when the past 34 or maybe 48 years, no incumbent party in Karnataka was re-elected with full majority. So it was clear that BJP was going to lose the election, but this majority for Congress came because of many such factors. That's my feeling.
So we'll wrap up. Thank you everyone. Do read the book. Do support independent media. And let's hope Sreenivasan Jain starts a YouTube channel fast.